journey was connected to an untold, hidden history of our nation.
Monday night at 9 on MPT.
Sun Nurseries, featuring locally grown annuals, perennials, fruiting plants, trees, and more. Sun Nurseries also offers landscape design and installation. Family owned in Howard County. More at sunnurseries.com.
Wine in the Woods, featuring Maryland wineries and local breweries, live music, juried artisans, and gourmet food. May 21st and 22nd at Symphony Woods in Columbia, Maryland. More information at wineinthewoods.com.
You serve the state, you serve the nation, you earned the benefits. The Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs has been connecting veterans, dependents, and survivors to VA benefits and services since 1999. Visit veterans.maryland.gov to learn more.
This program is made by MPT to enrich the diverse communities throughout our state and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening. Welcome to State Circle. Coming up tonight, the fudge may be gone, but a lot of dough is heading to Baltimore's Inner Harbor. And the politics of your local school board. That's ahead. We begin tonight with the political roundtable. Joining us are Professors Melissa Deckman of Washington College and Todd Eberly of St. Mary's College of Maryland. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start, if we can, with a Maryland-centric view of the drama at the Supreme Court this week. If the court goes ahead and does what it appears it's getting ready to do and rolls back its abortion protections, will that have impact on Maryland's upcoming elections?
I don't think there's going to be that much of an impact on Maryland's races per se. Maryland is a blue state. About 2/3 of Marylanders are pretty pro-choice in their attitudes on abortion. I think that the Republican Party is staunchly pro-life, and I suspect that whoever the nominee for the governor's race is going to have that position, but I don't think it's going to move the needle at all in terms of the race, in terms of the gubernatorial election. And most of our districts at the congressional level are heavily Democratic. The one race where it might be interesting is in the 1st district with Andy Harris. I'm wondering if I suspect will still likely win because of the gerrymandering and all the Republicans in the district, but maybe this decision, if it holds and Roe is overturned, will energize some Democratic voters in those districts, but we'll have to see.
Professor Eberly, your first blush look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one area where there should be some concern is among those Republicans running statewide, because this is shaping up to be a really good year for Republicans. They're motivated. They want to turn out the vote. Joe Biden's approval rating is low. The last thing they need is something that mutes that and then really motivates Democrats to vote. And then I already saw a very effective ad on Twitter. It showed Kelly Schultz saying that, she would respect the law as it stands. And the ad said, and these 3 justices said the same thing during their confirmation hearing. So I think she's got to be worried about that.
Interesting, because that was the Larry Hogan construction when he first ran. It was talked about very little, but I remember asking him about it, and he said that he was personally opposed to abortion, but wouldn't do anything to affect the status quo in Maryland. And that worked through 2 elections, but now this is going to be on the front burner.
I think it's notable this session, for the first time, there was legislation that essentially extended abortion rights. One of the provisions of legislation passed by the General Assembly would allow for nurse practitioners and others to perform abortions. Hogan vetoed that bill. And so, of course, it was overridden quickly by the General Assembly. So he's never really had to test that sort of issue of dealing with abortion politics. So as he is slated perhaps to go run for governor, I think that he vetoed that out of principle. And so any person that wants to be the nominee for the Republican Party is going to have to be pro-life on abortion. So this, I think, gives him some bona fides in that area.
Oh, as Hogan starts running for president, you mean?
Yes, I'm sorry. If he does decide ultimately to try to seek his party's nomination.
It is interesting. I'm sorry, I was going to say it was interesting to think about the race that wasn't. If Mitch McConnell had been able to convince Larry Hogan to use his high popularity numbers to run for the U.S. Senate against incumbent Democrat Chris Van Hollen, if, you know, the setup of that race would have changed this week.
Well, although I think that the strategy of the Democrats would have been the same regardless, that if you elect Larry Hogan, that's a vote for Mitch McConnell. It's a vote for the judges that they would appoint. And now they can say that again and point specifically to the possibility of Roe being overturned to express the importance of it. So I think it just would have put a little extra oomph behind a strategy that they already would have been using.
Professor Deckman, you're an expert on gender and politics, and goes without saying that abortion is a deeply felt issue for many women. Everybody described it as a galvanizing issue.
Well, I think it's interesting when you look at trends in public opinion, there really isn't a gender gap when it comes to attitudes on abortion. Women are just as likely to be pro-choice as men and pro-life as men as well. I mean, I think the partisanship is what's more important in explaining attitudes. Republicans and Democrats feel very, very differently. Having said that, however, I've been doing some research on Gen Z women and their political activism in recent years. And I think that this decision potentially has the ability to really motivate younger women in ways that it hasn't prior to this. Because I think for this generation of women, they've grown up with the expectation that abortion would be safe and legal. And now that potentially is going to be taken away from them. And so I'm curious to see, and I suspect you might have higher turnout from younger women, especially in this election coming up.
I've seen a couple of articles that pointed to suburban women as a key block. Is there anything to that?
I think that's also something to watch. Again, Republicans are pretty much firm in their attitudes of opposition to abortion. But if you look at independent women, you look at suburban women, I think extremes really potentially have the ability to get them out to vote for Democrats. You saw this in 2018 and in the midterms as a response to Trump. I think that the Democrats can paint this issue as one where if Republicans are in charge, they're going to basically push through pretty extreme policies. That has the potential really to swing the votes back to Democrats in those crucial suburban areas, definitely.
There are 10 weeks to go until Maryland's primary election. Let's focus on that, setting the stage for those campaigns a little bit now that the legislative session is over. And I'll just ask you a wide open question. We'll start with Professor Eberly. When you look at all of these races, what's most interesting to you?
The number of folks that are running for the Democratic nominee is certainly interesting.
For governor?
Running for governor. Yeah.
Right.
But I think the other thing that is surprising is that we have so little polling on it. This is a high profile race because Democrats want to reclaim that seat. You would think there'd be a little bit more polling done for folks trying to see what happens post Larry Hogan.
And Professor Deckman, what stands out? I mean, we have got races for governor, attorney general, comptroller, a couple of interesting congressional districts.
Yeah, I think that along with Todd, I agree that we just have so many people running right now in the Democratic primary, and no one has really emerged as the clear front runner. And I don't think that's necessarily good for the Democratic Party going into the fall. I mean, the last time we had that happen, I think there was a lot of infighting and there was no clear consensus who the nominee should be. So I'll be interested to see who emerges. My guess is that it might be a function of name recognition. Folks like Francho or Sherm Baker are pretty well known. On the other races, though, as Todd mentioned earlier, there is a lot of momentum among Republican voters this election cycle. And so nominees like, I think, Barry Glassman for comptroller, I think Kelly Schultz for governor might have a decent chance of being elected this fall. But again, it's all going to turn on turnout and who's the most motivated. Which
gets back to potentially to the abortion issue. But if we play it forward and the Democrats have nominated somebody, but that person has been in a bruising primary, has spent a lot of resources. You know, the Republican primary for governor is interesting as well. There's no polling on that either. So it's Delegate Cox, who was endorsed by Donald Trump, who had a pretty good week in terms of other endorsements nationally, and Kelly Schultz, who was a former legislator, also a former cabinet secretary for Governor Hogan, has the Hogan lane. Is there any suspense there?
Well, again, we don't know. I mean, my suspicion is that voters are going to look for someone that they believe can win. I think they learned that lesson with Larry Hogan nominating him twice. So I suspect that Schultz gets that nomination, but I'd certainly be worried. I'd absolutely be, especially if turnout is low and those Trump voters are really enthusiastic.
There's a really intriguing race between somebody named O'Malley and somebody named Brown. Viewers might recall, we used to have the O'Malley-Brown administration. Governor Martin O'Malley and Anthony Brown, his lieutenant governor. Now Congressman Brown is giving up his seat in Congress to run for Maryland Attorney General with Brian Frosh retiring. And also running for that is the former First Lady, retired District Court Judge Katie Curran O'Malley. It's a fascinating setup, but again, at a time when there's going to be so much else going on and on the ballot, I've read very little about this race.
Yeah, I've been struck too by the remarkable lack of information that's coming out about that race. In fact, I was driving over to the college and I saw one of the first yard signs, I think, of the whole season I think it was for Katie O'Malley. Again, I haven't seen any sort of polling on this issue. My hunch is that Anthony Brown has a slight advantage only because he's had more electoral experience, right? He's been elected statewide, he's been elected to Congress. He is, someone who served in the state legislature. And Katie O'Malley, I think she's qualified. She's a judge. And her father, of course, was the longstanding attorney general as well. But I think he has a little bit more of an advantage because of the electoral experience.
There is one referendum. You mentioned early on that the legislature thought about putting an abortion referendum on the state ballot for the purpose of putting it in the Constitution. That didn't happen, which is an interesting division of opinion between the House of Delegates and the state Senate. But in the fall, we are going to have a referendum on legalizing marijuana in Maryland. Is that a turnout driver, do you think?
I think there's a hope among Democrats that it's a turnout driver. They think that this putting on the ballot might, again, blunt that Republican advantage, turn out younger voters. And if that's the case, it boosts them a little bit. There's really no other reason I could think of why you would put this on a referendum as opposed to simply passing legislation and legalizing it.
All right. We will stay in touch as this moves forward. Professors Todd Eberly, St. Mary's College in Maryland, and Melissa Deckman of Washington College. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The list is long for candidates who are hoping to serve on their local school boards. As Nancy Amata reports, there's a lot of interest from newcomers and good reason why some incumbents might be choosing to step back.
It's a very stressful job. It takes a lot of time. And certainly the last 2 years, it's not been a pleasant time to be there and be subject to some of the criticism and hate that some people are putting towards school boards.
Brad Young, the president of the Frederick County School Board, says he's ready to move on after 12 years of service. He's running for an at-large county council seat. He concedes that the pandemic led to an incredible amount of pressure for school board members.
It was just tough that any decision that you made, you knew that you were going to have a large number of people that disagreed with it.
And people were quick to post their criticism on social media or fire off scathing or sometimes threatening emails. Beyond the pandemic, at school board meetings around the country, debates over curriculum such as critical race theory or what's being taught in health education has led to shouting matches, even physical altercations.
But when you get up there and start yelling and screaming and making accusations, you're not helping your case. Get up and make cogent points about why you believe something should or shouldn't be, and you have more of an opportunity to influence the decisions that the board makes that might be something more aligned to what you think should happen.
Increased engagement might also explain why there appears to be more interest in serving on school boards. Many are first-time candidates.
There's a lot of shift going on, and so people are interested in getting involved who maybe wouldn't have thought about it before that.
Amanda Jaskowski is among the 8 candidates running for 3 open seats on the Carroll County School Board. As an educator and occupational therapist, this mother of 3 wants to serve her community.
I'm an active volunteer in my child's school. I serve on the PTA. I'm in the schools. I see what's going on as far as the infrastructure and the capital investments that are needed.
Irrespective of their qualifications, perhaps their greatest asset will be keeping an open mind.
I think that it's great to have a diversity of voices and perspectives. That's why it's ruled by committee. We shouldn't have just one particular orientation on the board.
I've worked probably over my 12 years with at least 20 different school board members, and many that we didn't agree politically on a lot of issues. But I've had great relationships because I think it's good to have a diversity of views on the board so that you can come to a better decision that better meets all the needs of students and parents in the community.
I'm Nancy Yamada for State Circle.
Now, a rising tide of funding expected to wash into Baltimore's Inner Harbor area. We spoke with Delegate Luke Klippinger of Baltimore and Downtown Partnership President Shalonda Stokes.
It's well over $100 million that's being directed to projects in and around the harbor, which is really the jewel of our city that drives economic development, drives tourism, drives so many things that bring people to Baltimore. But it's essential money that's going to help us rebuild the promenade around the harbor that so many people enjoy, help complete the second phase of Rash Field, which the first phase, the first part of what's been done at Rash Field has been incredible and been really heavily used. So looking forward to that second phase. But it supports the aquarium and Chesapeake Shakespeare and the Science Center and so many other institutions that really bring people downtown and engage them with the city that we love.
Ms. Stokes, from your perspective, what is this going to mean?
This means a tremendous amount to the city, to the state, and to the region. I think part of what we all know is there is no thriving anything, area, city, state, when it has a failing core and a failing downtown. And we're just so excited about the investment. Senate President Ferguson, Delegate Klippinger, Delegate Lewis and Learman. This for downtown was, for us, something that was needed, the catalyst needed. It's the momentum, I think, and you can see it by people who are willing to recommit and do some things and double down on our center.
Do you see this question for either of you as being restorative or transformative? In other words, are we trying to get back to the heyday of the Inner Harbor, or are we changing course a little bit?
If I can start, I think it's both and. I think that we know that there has not been investment in this area for some time, this type of significant investment. And so there are some things that we have to do that are restorative. But we also understand the impact of transformation. And when you have record amounts of money, it allows you to leverage additional money so that you can do the things to transform. So we're doing both.
There's a lot of focus on Harbor Place. It's been the crown jewel of the Inner Harbor since 1980, the festival marketplace. It's half empty. It's in receivership. I think there's a bank that's owed like $70 million. How is this going to work? What really ought to be on that footprint?
I think there are a couple of things. I think there is a recognition of the state that it's in now, and a communal thought that we can't let that happen again. And so what we are excited about is the investment, not only in the promenade, but the recent announcement that we're getting this out of receivership and can start to do some things that are thoughtful. Jeff, my first job at the age of 14 was cleaning at the Inner Harbor. So you talk about Harbor Place, definitely in its heyday and what it's been able to do and make of a number of people. It's been our staple. I think over the years, we all agree that it probably became more of a tourist attraction than something that the locals also enjoyed. And so in all of the meetings that I've been involved and invited to, there is talk about this future that is inclusive and celebrates our city as well. So it has that local flavor.
I completely agree. And I think we both have memories of what Harbor Place was like when it first started, where you had a lot of local vendors, you had a lot of local businesses, people who lived in the neighborhoods around there and around the city who opened up stores there. You could, buy food for dinner there, and it was more than sort of what I would call semi-big box retail. Not to knock it, I guess, entirely, but we need to have a good mix of things that'll truly bring people who live around Harbor Place back downtown.
Delegate Klippinger, they don't know anything about the fudgery, do they? Remember,
they don't know about the fudgery.
That's right. We need it. We need
the fudgery. Made me the man I am today. They need the fudgery. We need to bring back, there was the kite store. There was the store that did nothing, I think, but teddy bears. But all of those were run by people local. They were all local people. And that I think that attracted those local residents who wanted to go and help out their friends and neighbors. And that piece of the puzzle kind of went missing.
Yeah, the sense of community.
Let me ask if you think to any degree what happened around the harbor was self-inflicted. In other words, the city government, state government have incentivized, have created tax breaks for all the building that we see in Harbor East, Port Covington, a lot of cranes, office towers, residential towers. It's where the hot restaurants are, the hot retail. Did we accidentally destroy downtown Baltimore by trying to build up those other areas?
I would say no. I do think that downtowns and areas evolve. I think that, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and go back and say, but I do think that there is something to having a thriving downtown with multiple neighborhoods. Think of every city that you love and it has it. I think where we have responsibility right now and what's so exciting about this historic investment in downtown is we now have an opportunity to reimagine this part. I mean, at one point, remember, it was department stores over here. There's always going to be a shift. We're in the middle of that shift, but at a point that we can shape the future of this part of downtown.
The other question that always comes up when it comes to spending around the harbor, I mean, going back to the Schaefer era, the Tale of Two Cities argument that we're putting all this money into, the tourism stuff and not supporting communities. Delegate Klippinger, how would you respond to that?
Well, I'd say that we have put in an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of support for communities across the city. And one of the ways that we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that as we go forward, is if we look at the reinvestment that we've made in our schools. We've built a lot of new schools all the way across the city, and certainly across my district in Cherry Hill, in Greektown, at John Rura, at Hollandtown, and at Patterson High School, and a bunch of other places across the city. We're reinvesting in those buildings because those are essential for our communities. And I have to tell you, the over $1 billion that we've spent in rebuilding those schools is a lot more than what we're doing downtown. Ultimately, it's not a competition. We all do better when we all do better. And we have to do better by reinvesting in those essential things that drive more people to the city and that properly educate our kids and help them do better themselves. So it's not one or the other. We are showing that we're able to do both.
And we can't talk about the questions of drawing tourists back to Baltimore, rebuilding the Central District without talking about crime. Anybody who watches the 11 o'clock news is worried about crime in Baltimore. I mean, how much of a headwind is that to what you're trying to accomplish?
Look, it's a challenge, and we've had this challenge, and we've worked through this challenge in the past. We have worked very hard through the downtown partnership, through the waterfront partnership, to put more people around the harbor, to make people feel safe and secure when they're downtown. We want to continue to do that work and provide support for the Baltimore Police Department so that people feel like they can come and enjoy our downtown. We do have to fight that image a little bit, but the worst thing that we could do is not invest in these communities and then try and make the argument that we're waiting for it to become safer. We want to invest in downtown, make it stronger, and make it more and more of a place where people want to go. And I think that in part will help address issues related to crime.
Ms. Stokes, well, I'll let you answer that, but also give us a sense of the role of the Downtown Partnership going forward, because you're involved in some of this funding.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think part of what Delegate Klippinger talked about is when we look at safety, we have to look at it holistically. There is an enforcement component to what's happened, and we're thankful that we've received funding from the state and others to really be able to beef up on the enforcement side. And what that means to us is twofold. One, there are some things that are more nuisance in nature. And our thought is not to criminalize poverty in the process. And so, we have engaged, as an example, Baltimore City School police officers, in addition to our guides and, to help de-escalate. They have relationships where we have youth-related incidents, and it doesn't have to go, from 0 to 100. We've also engaged other assets to help us just start to, bring in the foot deployments, the walking, the relationship, because while we believe enforcement is one component, the other thing is we have to fix some of the systemic natures of why some of this happens. And so what the Team 46 also did as a part of their legislation is we're talking about money for workforce. We know a number of these challenges, you get here because of a lack of X or Y. And so we're trying to have a balanced approach. Downtown Partnership offers supplemental services to the city and Baltimore Police Department in terms of resources, but also on the other side where we are providing outreach and programs to make sure we're meeting the need so that we can do these things and meet with a solution that really helps uplift and enforce at the same time.
A lot of things to look forward to this summer. You got Paul McCartney coming back to Baltimore after a slight absence, and the Ravens are going to be good. The Orioles will be good someday, and a lot of good things ahead.
Oh my God, it's so many. The arena is coming back online. Like Lexington Market opens in 90 days. I mean, we have people doubling down. This is going to be exciting. So we just want y'all to buckle up, put on your seatbelts, lock arms with us, and let's go.
And that is State Circle for this week. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.
University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, leading the way on Chesapeake Bay restoration, while guiding our state, nation, and world toward a more sustainable future.
MSATP is a collective embodiment of accounting, tax, and financial service businesses. We're committed to providing quality and affordable education, technical and